There are certain people that have mycotoxin exposure, and it causes them to become sensitive and create antibodies to the mycotoxins themselves. This is something you can prove through the mymycolab.com test, okay? This is something you also need to be aware of on a long-term basis though, because once antibodies are created, then the immune system is now aware of this thing that it's always looking out for. And if you have this thing that shows up in that person's environment, the immune system will show you symptoms, right? For example, when my daughter was exposed for years to black mold, aspergillus, things like that, and at the end of it, we got her out of it, finally got her symptom free. But if I put her back in a place that has black mold or has aspergillus, she'll start to get some wheezing within a few days, right? So I'll start to get a little bit of those asthma symptoms back. If it's a few months into it, who knows what would happen, right? Because she hasn't had enough time away from it for her body to stop producing the antibodies to the mycotoxins, okay? And sometimes you need several years in a situation that is as severe as my daughter. You know, it could be 2-3 years, it could be 7 years, right? It just depends on how frequent the exposures are and how significant they are. Ideally, you want to try to remove the child or the person from exposure completely over the course of a few years. When you want to travel, you have to do things like that. You got to try to minimize exposure or pick the cleanest and the most high end of all the hotel units and try not to use the forced air, because I'm telling you, that is the biggest risk. When you start using the forced air, you increase the probability of the person having a reaction, because often there's something in those ducts that you're pushing into the air and you can't see it. They don't clean it often enough. They could have dirty filters, whatever it is, or there's something in the room, in the carpet. You know, trust me, my daughter was like the canary in the coal mine. She would sense everything when she was ultra sensitive instantaneously. Now her reactions before, which would take moments, seconds, now take days, which is a lot better, right? But the idea is this, that you can have a child or you can have a person that is completely asymptomatic. They have no symptoms at all unless they're in a building that has mycotoxins or water damage, okay? So you have to be aware, once you become symptom free, that this is something that you have to be cognizant of. You always have to be aware of the symptoms. If they start to pop up a little bit, you have to ask yourself, where were you? What was your environment? You have to start changing what you're doing. This was something that was hard to accept, right? The first few years is that you gotta, once you get out of mold exposure, and you have to really be cognizant of your environment. You can't just simply get to another place. And even when you heal up and you have no symptoms left, you're doing well. You have to give it a few years of being very conservative with your environment, spending lots of outdoor time if possible, making sure the building you're in is as new as possible and was tested multiple ways before you choose to go ahead and call it a safe place, So if you have any questions, reach out to me. I just want to state that this is extremely, extremely important topic, that mycotoxin sensitivity is something that can last for years, because you develop antibodies and the immune system, if it's traumatized enough, the cellular memory will last for years based upon how significant the events were. In my daughter's exposure, it was nearly her entire life, for 7+ years, her first 7 years of her life, combined with all the vaccines, the antibiotics, all the other trauma, the things that happened before I got her. And, it created a perfect storm. Eventually I realized that the main trigger of all of her symptoms was in fact what she was inhaling, and it could be next to nothing, and it could cause symptoms to flare up. And everything else was secondary. All the food was secondary, all the other stuff was secondary to what you're inhaling. So do not discount mycotoxin sensitivity. Once you're exposed, you got to at least have a few years where you're not exposed to truly get over this thing. You got to be able to maintain the right diet the best you can, be on the right supplements, have a nervous system regulation routine, recondition your brain, start to eliminate the fear, etc. So these are all important thoughts. If you have any questions, reach out to me. My website is endsickness.org. Thanks for watching.